Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into a world where hygiene wasn't a habit, it was a rumor. A time when bathing was rare, soap was suspect, and your shirt stood up on its own. Forget the myths of chivalry and clean linen. This is what it really looked like. Scratching lice with a spoon, sharing bath water with strangers, and pretending you didn't smell like regret and turnips. So, before you get too cozy, take a second to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy this strange little corner of quiet storytelling. And drop a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is for you. It's strangely comforting to know who else is drifting off with us around the world. Now get comfortable. Let the day melt away, and we'll drift back together into the quiet corners of the past. You wake up in a fog of sweat, smoke, and something faintly resembling sour ale. The good news, you're still breathing. The bad news, so are the lice. Your mattress is technically straw, but calling it that is generous. It's more like a flattened pile of compost held together by skin cells, goat hair, and a prayer. You shift and immediately regret it. Something beneath you squirms and scuttles. You try not to think about it. Maybe it was a mouse. Maybe it was your cousin. You don't ask questions in 1325. You just survive. The blanket clinging to your legs smells like old soup and wet sheep. It's made of wool, but time and body grease have transformed it into a single matted organism. You've slept under it every night for 2 years. It hasn't been washed in any of those nights. It now weighs the same as a toddler, not because it's warm, but because it's soaked with the collective experience of winter, sweat, and livestock. You sit up slowly, and your spine protests like a rusted hinge. Your neck pops. Your shoulder clicks. You're 23, but your joints suggest a much longer journey. A rooster outside screams, though whether it's morning or just confused again is anyone's guess. The air is cold enough to make your breath visible, which only draws attention to the smell of your own mouth. Something between fermented bread and unbrushed desperation. The hut you live in is one room, and that room is full. 7 people, 3 chickens, 1 goat, and several aggressive flies. No walls, no privacy. Just bodies arranged like stacked firewood and the occasional snore that sounds like a drowning ox. You rise to your feet, which is a process. The floor is dirt usually, but today it's soft in one spot. You don't ask why. You just step over it. Someone coughs, a deep, wet, phlegmy thing that suggests plague, but is probably just Tuesday. Your mother mutters something about starting the fire. Your father scratches something that shouldn't be scratched in public. The baby cries. You all ignore it. Crying is just background music now. You find your tunic crumpled at the edge of the bed. It's made of coarse wool and stiff enough to stand on its own. You haven't washed it in months. You haven't wanted to. Washing it requires hauling water from the well, lighting a fire, and scrubbing with ash until your hands bleed. It's easier to pretend it smells like history. You slide it over your head and feel the familiar itch settle in. There's something crawling on your back. You slap it. It escapes. You let it go. You're already late. Your hair is greasy, tangled, and suspiciously warm in places. You scratch your scalp and pull out a few unidentified specks. You consider braiding it, but the knots suggest otherwise. You tie it back with a scrap of string you once used to hold a chicken cage shut. Close enough. There's no bathroom. Just a wooden bucket behind the hut that already smells like despair. You hold your breath, use it quickly, and say a small apology to whatever deity oversees sanitation. If you're feeling fancy, you might rinse your hands in the trough out front. But it's frozen over, and the pig drank from it yesterday. So maybe not today. You haven't brushed your teeth, and you won't. Not because you forgot, but because toothbrushes haven't been invented yet. Some people chew on sticks, others rinse with vinegar. You do neither. Your teeth are already a battlefield, and the war is going poorly. Your gums ache. Your breath could empty a room. But no one says anything, because everyone else smells just as bad. And still, this is normal. This is hygiene. This is the best it gets. You step outside into the cold gray of dawn, dirt underfoot, smoke in the air, and the faint hope that today you won't itch as much. A chicken pecks your toe. The neighbor's child is already crying. Someone somewhere is shouting about turnips. And you, in all your unwashed, slightly fungal glory, are ready to face the day. Welcome to 1325. Try not to breathe too deeply. The first thing you notice isn't the cold, it's the smell. Thick, sour, clinging to the inside of your nostrils like it's trying to set up permanent residence. It's not one smell either. It's a symphony. Feet that haven't met soap in 6 fortnights. Damp wool marinated in sweat and wood smoke. And something else. Something earthy. You hope it's just turnips. You don't ask. In the 14th century, questions only lead to worse answers. You lie still for a moment, wrapped in your blanket of filth and resignation, trying not to inhale too deeply. You can't see anything. There's no candle, no window, and the fire burned out hours ago. But your ears work fine. Someone's snoring, loudly. 2 beds over, or rather, 2 bodies over, because beds are a luxury you've heard about, like dragons or clean water. Here, it's one straw-stuffed sack stretched across a wooden frame built by someone who had clearly never built anything before. You share it with your siblings, your uncle, and possibly a chicken, who has decided the corner near your feet is now her nesting spot. You try to turn over quietly, but the straw crunches like dried leaves underfoot. There's a sharp jab in your hip, something poking through the mattress again. A stick? A bone? You hope it's not from the rat that died under there last week. You told your brother to get rid of it, but he forgot. He also forgets to wash his legs, or his hair, or move when you ask him to. A loud cough erupts from the other side of the room. Your mother, probably. Her winter cough never leaves, just changes pitch as the seasons shift. Someone stirs near the hearth, knocking over a pot that clanks against stone. The baby whines. A goat bleats. The sound is oddly accusatory, as if even she's tired of living in this fever-scented human soup. The room is one space. No walls, no dividers, no privacy. You live, eat, sleep, argue, birth, and die within arm's reach of everyone else. Modesty is a myth here. If you need to change clothes, you do it in the corner, under a blanket, pretending no one's looking. Everyone's looking. They just pretend harder. There's no door to speak of, just a warped wooden plank that groans like it's in pain every time it opens. The roof leaks, but only when it rains, which is often. Last week, your cousin slipped on a puddle inside the hut and fell face first into the fire pit. He's fine, mostly. His eyebrows never coming back, though. You swing your legs off the bed and plant your feet on the floor. It's damp, always damp. Cold, packed dirt mixed with ashes, straw, and whatever your uncle tracked in from the goat pen. The idea of sweeping exists. The act of doing it does not. You shuffle toward the fire, which someone has rekindled with damp wood and spite. Smoke curls around your ankles. Your eyes sting. It's cozy in the way that a collapsed tent in a thunderstorm is cozy. You glance at the others still sleeping. They look peaceful if you squint hard enough. One brother drools into the pillow you share. Another has a hand tucked under his shirt, scratching with the intensity of a man being devoured from the inside out, which, in fairness, might be true. Everyone itches, always. Bed bugs, lice, fleas, your trinity of nighttime torment. You once woke up with a flea in your ear. You named him Gregory. He stayed for 3 days. You grab your tunic from the hook near the door. It's still damp from yesterday's mist and smells like regret. But it's the only one you have. Made of thick wool, coarse enough to double as sandpaper, it clings to your skin and refuses to let go. You pull it on and feel every seam scratch at your body like it's punishing you for existing. No one's talking yet. Morning conversation is limited to grunts and passive-aggressive yawns. The goat has more to say than most people. She's currently trying to chew a corner of the blanket you slept under. You let her. If she eats it, maybe you'll finally get a new one. You've heard rumors that other people, richer people, have blankets made of linen, washed monthly, scented with lavender. You can't even picture what lavender smells like. The closest thing you've got is the mint growing by the outhouse, and even that's dying. You sit by the fire, stretch your legs, and scratch your ankle. Something jumps. You slap at it. Too late. It's already hiding somewhere in your boot. You'll meet again, probably when you're trying to fall asleep tonight. This is your bedroom. A single room where 10 people breathe the same stale air, argue over who gets the dry corner, and live in a pile of shared warmth and unspoken understanding. There are no secrets, no space, no clean lines between mine and yours. Not for clothing, not for body heat, and definitely not for bugs. You're never truly alone, especially not from the fleas. It starts as a whisper in your gut, a subtle tightening, a suggestion that something within you has decided its time has come. Nature, as they say, calls, except she's not calling politely. She's banging on the door with both fists and absolutely no sense of decorum. You sit up, groggy, half-dressed, surrounded by snoring relatives and confused livestock. Your legs are numb, your stomach is not. You need to go. Urgently. But there's no bathroom. Not here. Not anywhere. The concept hasn't been invented yet. Privacy, porcelain, flush handles, all of it centuries away. What you have instead is a wooden pail, and not even a clean one. The bucket lives behind the door, tucked in the corner beside a sack of onions and a boot with no mate. It's round, splintered, and already a third full. The smell hits you first. Sharp, rancid, like something trying to escape the laws of biology. You try not to breathe through your nose. You fail. And now your eyes are watering. It's still dark outside, but you're not about to wait. You pull the bucket toward you, stepping over your brother, who's still asleep, and, judging by the smell, has made peace with going wherever he's lying. You whisper a quiet apology to the gods of dignity and squat. The air is cold, the wood colder. The sound is immediate, humiliating, and deeply public. There are no walls, just the thin hope that everyone's still asleep and that no one remembers this moment when the sun rises. You finish quickly, not because you're done, but because shame has a timer, and yours just ran out. Now comes the disposal. You stand wobbling slightly and lift the sloshing bucket with both hands. It's heavier than it looks. Liquid shame weighs more than water. You push the door open with your hip, step outside, and instantly regret it. The cold slaps your face. The wind howls. You can't tell if it's raining, misting, or if the air itself is damp out of spite. The street outside your hut is barely a path. Cobblestones? Dream on. It's mud, straw, horse droppings, and the collective waste of half the town. You look both ways, not for traffic, but for witnesses, and do what everyone does. You yell the warning. Gardilou. It's supposed to mean, watch out below in some bastardized French. The idea is that anyone nearby will scurry out of range. No one ever does. The shout is just tradition now. A courtesy screamed seconds before catastrophe. You toss the bucket's contents into the street. It splashes against the earth, mixing with whatever your neighbor dumped 10 minutes ago. A river of human filth begins its slow, oozing journey downhill. If it rains today, and it probably will, it'll speed up, flow straight through town, past the church, down to the market, and maybe into the stream you get your drinking water from. Circle of life. You rinse the bucket with what little water you have left in the rain barrel. It's green, smells like algae and sadness. Good enough. You set the bucket back in its corner, a little emptier, a little darker, and go back inside. If you're lucky enough to live in a village with public latrines, congratulations. You get to squat shoulder to shoulder with strangers on a long wooden plank with holes carved into it. There's no divider, no ventilation, just eye contact and the subtle competition of who can pretend not to hear the sounds coming from 2 seats over. Small talk is discouraged. Breathing is optional. Toilet paper? That's a future luxury. Here, you wipe with what's available. Straw, moss, a rag that's been used too many times. If you're wealthy, maybe a square of wool. If you're desperate, your hand. Which is why handshakes aren't a thing, and why no one eats with their left. Castles don't do much better. Nobles have something called a garderobe, a hole in the wall that empties directly into the moat. You sit on stone, exposed to the elements, and hope no one's climbing up from below. Yes, that's happened. Raiders, spies, the occasional rat. The moat isn't just a defense, it's a toilet, which says a lot about the drinking water downstream. And still, this is considered normal. No one questions it. The streets smell like a tannery caught fire inside an open sewer, and everyone just lives with it. The human nose, it turns out, has an incredible ability to give up. You head back to your straw mat, crawl under your itchy blanket and close your eyes. The bucket is empty. The street is slightly wetter, and you've survived another round of medieval indoor plumbing. Tomorrow, you'll do it all again. Just hope no one's under the window next time. You've been alive in 1325 for approximately 4 days now, and you already understand that filth isn't a condition. It's a lifestyle. You wear it like a second skin, or maybe a third, considering what's currently crusted on your tunic. Dirt is in your fingernails, behind your ears, and somehow in your dreams. But today, something different happens. Someone says it's time to bathe. You pause mid-itch and squint at them like they've just suggested you ride a dragon to the moon. Bathe? Now? It's not a holy day. No one died. You didn't get married. There's no celebration. The river's still half frozen. But apparently the timing is right. The stars have aligned. Or more accurately, your aunt finally complained that your smell was attracting ghosts. So here you are, preparing for the annual event that will scrape the surface grime off your body and briefly trick you into thinking you've been reborn. Bathing is not routine. It's a ritual. It takes planning, effort, and enough firewood to make the neighbors ask if you're hosting a funeral. You start by hauling water from the well, which is a generous word for the hole in the ground 3 fields over, currently guarded by 2 geese and a boy with no shoes. The water is brown, or gray, or green, depending on the season and what recently died upstream. You fill your buckets anyway. You're not here for hydration. You're here for transformation. It takes 6 trips. Your arms feel like boiled turnips by the end. You pour the water into a wooden tub that looks more like a barrel that failed its dream of becoming a wine cask. It leaks. It always leaks. You plug the gaps with straw and prayer. Then you start the fire. The wood is damp, the smoke is aggressive, and the entire hut smells like roasted mildew. You crouch by the flames, waiting for the water to become less deathly and more lukewarm agony. Eventually, you strip. Slowly. The clothes come off in layers, each one releasing a new scent, like the unfolding of a very unfortunate flower. Your tunic clings to you on the way down, refusing to let go, resentful that you're abandoning it after months of loyal service. Underneath, your skin is pale, raw in places, and dusted with the faint shimmer of flea bites and last autumn's sweat. You look like someone trying to cosplay as a potato sack that learned pain. You lower yourself into the tub, inch by inch. The water bites. It's not hot enough to soothe, not cold enough to numb. Just the right temperature to make your soul consider escape. You grit your teeth and descend. Your knees hit the bottom. Your feet slide on something that might be bark, or something worse. You don't look. You sit there, motionless, while your family pretends not to stare. It's your turn. That's the rule. 1 tub, 1 fire, 1 bath, shared. You get the cleanest water of the group, which isn't saying much. It's already tinged yellow. By the time your little brother goes in, it'll look like soup that's been outlawed. Soap exists, technically. It's a hard gray lump made of animal fat and ash. You rub it on your skin and feel it scratch away the upper crust. It smells like burnt bacon and broken dreams. But it works, sort of. You scrub until your arms ache, then dip your head, letting the water soak your hair. It foams slightly. You hope it's from the soap. You really, really hope. Rinsing is a luxury. You don't have a second bucket, so you just slosh around, hoping the filth leaves your body through osmosis. You scrape dirt from behind your ears, your knees, the back of your neck. It flakes off in sheets. You lose a few scabs, a tick, possibly a small ecosystem. You emerge 5 pounds lighter and twice as confused. Towel? Number you drip dry by the hearth, wrapped in a scratchy wool blanket that's only marginally drier than you are. Your hair freezes in clumps. Your skin tightens like an overcooked sausage. And still, you feel better, cleaner, lighter, like a human who has briefly remembered what skin is supposed to feel like. You dress in the same clothes. They're still filthy, still stiff, but now your clean body feels like an imposter inside them. You smell different, not good, just less bad, like old soup with a sprig of mint. And then it's over. Until next season. Until someone else complains. Until the lice return in greater numbers and declare your scalp a nation state. Bathing doesn't change your life. It just pauses the decay. You'll be itchy by tomorrow, sticky by nightfall. But for one glorious hour, you were almost clean. And in 1325, that's practically a miracle. You step into the bathhouse and immediately regret every decision that led you here. The air is thick, humid, and smells like boiled onions, old feet, and a hint of something herbal, like someone dropped a rosemary bush into a puddle and hoped for the best. The heat hits your face like a damp rag. Your tunic clings tighter. Your pores open out of protest, not relaxation. This isn't a spa. It's a social crucible soaked in steam and judgment. Communal bathing, they said. Good for your health, they said. But what they didn't say, what no one says out loud, is that this place is less about hygiene and more about hierarchy, scandal, and trying not to make eye contact while people scrub things they probably shouldn't be scrubbing in public. You're in a town, which means you're lucky enough to have access to one of these establishments. Technically, that's an improvement. Technically. You pay a few coins to the man at the door, stooped, bearded, and coated in a sheen of steam and secrets, and step into a room full of strangers in various stages of undress and disapproval. There are no stalls, no curtains, no private tubs with soothing music and eucalyptus towels. Just long wooden benches, wide stone tubs, and water that might have been clean once, long ago before the third man got in. Now it's a cloudy broth of soap, sweat, and unspoken confessions. It sloshes with every movement. It judges you. You pick a bench near the edge and start removing your layers. Slowly, hesitantly, because every inch of exposed skin feels like a public announcement. Around you, women and men, depending on the hour and local custom, chat, gossip, scrub, rinse, and stare. One man is aggressively washing behind his ears. A woman across the room is shaving her armpits with a knife that looks more suited for field dressing a deer. A boy runs past, naked, giggling, trailed by a harassed-looking woman with a loofah the size of a raccoon. You step toward the water, trying to look confident. You fail. The warmth is immediate, but the slime is worse. The bottom of the tub is slippery, textured with centuries of use and questionable maintenance. You settle in, knees up, trying not to brush against the hairy man to your left or the stoic grandmother to your right. You are now part of the soup. You've joined the collective experience. You may never fully recover. The conversation swirls as thick as the steam. Someone's daughter is definitely pregnant. Someone else's brother has been seen with the blacksmith's apprentice. The baker's wife shaved her eyebrows again, and no one can figure out why. You say nothing. You listen. Because silence is safer, and gossip is the currency of this place. What happens in the bathhouse doesn't stay in the bathhouse. It becomes your neighbor's dinner topic. At some point, the priest walks by. He's not here to bathe. He's here to inspect. His presence is a reminder that cleanliness might be next to godliness, but only if it's supervised. He glares. He frowns. He mutters something about moral decay and unguarded bodies. You nod respectfully. He lingers. You wonder how long is too long for a priest to observe naked shoulders before it becomes a different kind of sin. Someone offers you a cloth soaked in lye soap. You accept it and start scrubbing. The soap burns, which means it's working. You scrub your arms, your chest, your feet. You skip the more delicate parts because you're not that brave, and because 3 people are already staring at you like they know your whole family history and are rating your scrubbing technique. You rinse. You scrape. You attempt to feel cleaner. The water turns a new shade of gray around you. You try not to think about it. By the time you step out, your skin is red, your hair damp, and your dignity slightly bruised. You dry off with a rag someone hands you, shared, obviously, and redress quickly. You smell like lye and rosemary. Better than before, but still faintly like suffering. On your way out, you catch the eye of someone from your street. They nod. You nod. Nothing will be said. Until tomorrow, when your bathing technique is dissected alongside the butcher's latest affair. The bathhouse isn't a luxury. It's a theater. A place where hygiene meets humiliation, and social surveillance is as thick as the mist. You entered hoping to feel clean. You leave knowing everyone now has an opinion about your kneecaps. Welcome to medieval self-care. It's not about feeling better. It's about surviving the rinse and walking away before someone asks why you took so long. It starts behind your ear, a slow, persistent tickle. You try to ignore it, pretend it's a stray hair or maybe a breeze, even though you're indoors and the air hasn't moved in 3 days. Then it starts again, behind your neck, along your collarbone, down your spine. It spreads like gossip, quiet at first, then suddenly everywhere. You are officially itchy. You scratch casually at first, the kind of scratch you do when you're still pretending you're not infested. But then comes the second phase, the full body alert. Something moves. You feel it. Tiny legs, clinging, crawling. You slap at it, miss, and now the itch has multiplied. You've gone from mild discomfort to medieval panic in under 10 seconds. This is life in 1325. You are not alone. Not ever. Not even when you wish you were. Your skin is real estate, and the tenants do not pay rent. Fleas are the most ambitious. They jump from person to person like gossip at a feast. You lie next to your cousin. Boom. Now you're hosting his entire parasite lineage. You sit on a bench after the baker's son. Congratulations. You've inherited a colony. You never see them arrive. You just feel them. A bite, a twitch, a vague sense that you are slowly becoming a habitat. Then there's lice, hair lice, body lice, and the kind no one wants to talk about. Your scalp is a battlefield. You comb it with a bone pick, or your fingers, or, if you're lucky, a lice comb made of wood with teeth so narrow it could double as a torture device. You scratch your head so often that it's basically a nervous tick. You do it during meals, during mass, during arguments. No one flinches. Everyone's doing the same thing. You once saw a nobleman with a jeweled brooch in his cloak and a flea the size of a lentil crawling across his forehead. He didn't even blink. Just kept talking about the grain tax while scratching the back of his neck, like a man haunted by invisible music. Wealth doesn't protect you. Silk shirts hide just as many bugs as wool tunics. The only difference is the fabric costs more to scratch holes through. Bed bugs are the night shift. You think you've gotten away clean, that maybe this evening you'll sleep unmolested. You are wrong. They wait until you're warm and still, then rise from the crevices of your straw mattress like cursed spirits. They crawl into your sleeves, your socks, your soul. You wake up with new welts every morning. You name them. One behind your knee is Gregory. The one on your neck is Beatrice. You stop fighting. You start negotiating. You've tried remedies. Everyone has. Some swear by rosemary stuffed in the hem of your tunic. Others burn sage or chew mint or smear garlic behind their ears. You've rubbed yourself with vinegar, slept beside onions, bathed once with a bar of ash soap so harsh it removed half your skin but none of the lice. You even tried prayer. The lice laughed. Out loud. The monks have their own solutions. Shaving their heads helps with scalp lice, but their robes are a different story. Wool wrapped around skin, day and night, becomes a playground for crawling things. You once saw a friar pull a flea from his sleeve during a sermon and crush it between his fingers mid-sentence without missing a beat. The Word of God waits for no infestation. Children have it worst. They roll in the mud, share blankets, and scratch with the passion of the damned. You've seen kids with scabs behind their ears from digging too deep. One girl had lice so persistent, her mother burned her bonnet and made her sleep in the pig pen, saying at least the pigs would share the burden. No one argued. You've considered shaving your head. Some do. But that only helps until your scalp turns into a patch of raw skin, too sensitive to touch and yet still somehow itchy. You scratch it anyway. You always do. There's no escape, no powder, no potion, no bath frequent enough or hot enough to banish them all. Hygiene, in this world, isn't about being clean. It's about being slightly less dirty than the person next to you. And if you can't be that, then at least scratch in rhythm, so the choir sounds harmonious. You reach for your spoon, not for eating, for scratching. You keep it tucked into your belt next to your knife and your dignity, both of which are slowly wearing down. You dig behind your shoulder blade and sigh. The relief is temporary. The itch will return. It always does. This is your skin. This is your life. You don't live in a world free of parasites. You live in a truce. And some days, it feels like you're losing. Your breath smells like something died in your mouth, and honestly, something probably did. Not today, maybe not this week, but sometime in the recent past. A scrap of meat lodged between your molars, a rogue bean from last month's pottage, a piece of barley that decided to rot in peace beneath your gum line. The concept of fresh breath hasn't been invented yet. Neither has the toothbrush or toothpaste, or even the idea that smiling should be anything other than a warning. You wake up with your tongue glued to the roof of your mouth, coated in something sour and suspicious. You hack into your palm and sniff. Mistake. It's bad. Even by 1325 standards. You rinse with warm beer because the water's worse, and swish with all the dignity of a man trying not to gag on his own regrets. Cleaning your teeth, such as it is, means one of three things: vinegar, wine, or chewing on a stick. You pick up your preferred option, a splintered twig with one end frayed from use, and start rubbing it across your teeth with the enthusiasm of someone trying to erase history. It's not effective. You know this. But it's something. And something is more than nothing. Your gums bleed instantly. Not a lot. Just a steady reminder that the inside of your mouth is falling apart one painful centimeter at a time. They've been bleeding for months, years. You spit onto the floor and see red. Not unusual. Not alarming. Just Tuesday. You once heard a rumor that a noble woman in France has ivory toothpicks encrusted with tiny rubies. You can't decide if that's luxurious or stupid, but you still kind of want one. You've also heard that some people rub ashes or salt into their mouths for that extra cleansing burn. You tried that once. Your lips peeled, your tongue swelled. You couldn't speak for 3 days, which your family considered a blessing. Your teeth are more brown than white, stained from wine, meat, and despair. The back ones ache constantly. One has a black pit in the middle, soft to the touch. You poke at it sometimes, like a loose nail in a coffin. It wiggles. You pretend it doesn't. There are no dentists, not real ones, just barber surgeons with knives and opinions. They cut hair. They open abscesses. They remove teeth with metal tongs and zero hesitation. If you complain about mouth pain, someone might hand you a cloth to bite on and direct you to the man with the blood-stained apron near the market. He'll yank the offending tooth while 3 people hold you down, and the village priest mutters prayers like, "That'll help." You've watched it happen. A grown man pinned to a chair made of crates, mouth pried open, screaming as a molar the size of a thumbnail was pulled free with a sickening pop. There was blood. So much blood. The barber held it up like a trophy, still glistening, and smiled with his own set of yellowed, uneven teeth. You never went back. Instead, you chew slowly, avoid the right side, favor soft foods. You swirl hot broth when you can get it, let it soothe the gums. It's not relief, but it's distraction. The ache never fully leaves. It just changes pitch. You know a man who died from a toothache. Not exaggerating. It swelled. He ignored it. It festered. Then he got a fever, started speaking in tongues, and dropped dead next to his sheep pen. They said it was punishment from God. You think it was sepsis. Not that you have that word, just the knowledge that something small can rot into something fatal, like everything else around here. Smiling is risky, not just because it reveals the battlefield inside your mouth, but because it draws attention. Teeth are tools, not ornaments. You use them to tear bread, rip meat, chew roots. You don't display them. You hide them. Unless you're threatening someone, then you bear them like a dog. And even that is only if you're willing to lose one in the fight. You've seen nobles with blackened gums and gold teeth hammered in place. Supposedly it's fashionable. You can't tell if it's fashion or desperation. You've also seen monks with no teeth at all, their jaws sunken, their speech slurred. They eat porridge and pray, a quiet, soft food existence. You're halfway there already. Every now and then, you dream of a clean mouth, of water that doesn't kill you, of a brush with bristles and a little ceramic pot filled with something minty and magical. You wake up with your mouth tasting like old wood and bitter regret. You spit. You chew your stick. You pray the pain stays dull and the tooth doesn't fall out during dinner. Dental hygiene isn't a routine. It's a gamble. One that you're already losing. Your hair itches before you're even fully awake. Not the casual kind of itch either. The kind that suggests something small and determined has built a kingdom on your scalp overnight and is currently declaring war on the back of your neck. You scratch, gently at first, then with purpose, then with the handle of a wooden spoon because fingers aren't cutting it anymore. You haven't washed your hair in weeks, months. You've stopped keeping track. It doesn't matter. No one around you has either. The last time someone tried to wash their hair with actual water, they got a fever and died 3 days later. Now people just mutter about opening the pores and inviting in the sickness, and wrap their heads in cloth, like hiding the problem will make it go away. You run a hand through your hair and immediately regret it. Your fingers snag halfway through, caught on a knot the size of a walnut and just as stubborn. It feels damp, not from water, but from a blend of sweat, smoke, and scalp oil aged like a cursed wine. You pull your hand free, and a few strands come with it. You consider keeping them. Hair's useful, braiding, padding, trading, but they're coated in something you'd rather not examine, so you flick them toward the corner and pretend you didn't see. Nobles, supposedly, have better options. They dust their hair with powders, ground herbs, flowers, sometimes even chalk, and call it refreshing, which is rich, considering most of them haven't touched water since the last coronation. You saw a noblewoman once in the market, her hair piled high and powdered pale like a dying swan. It smelled like lavender and damp cheese. Her servant followed behind her with a comb and a sad expression. Peasants like you don't have powders. You have hoods, hats, scarves, anything to hide the state of what's happening up there. Your own hood hasn't left your head in 4 days. It's wool, stiff with sweat, and shaped by repeated wear into something resembling a deflated pastry. But it does the job. Keeps the lice in, or out. You're not sure which anymore. Lice combs are more common than soap. Yours is carved from bone, passed down from your mother, who got it from her mother, who probably found it under a dying cow. The teeth are close set, sharp, and unforgiving. You use it in the mornings sometimes. Sit by the fire, tilt your head, and drag it through inch by painful inch. It catches everything. Nits, fleas, secrets. The pile of what it pulls out is always impressive, always horrifying. You flick it into the hearth and watch the little bodies curl in the heat. Small victories. Shampoo isn't a word you know. If someone said it to you, you'd assume it was a foreign curse or a type of fish. Hair cleaning, when it happens, involves soap made from ash and pig fat. It leaves your hair stiff, your scalp raw, and your entire head smelling like a butcher's apron. You've done it twice. The second time, you cried. Not because it hurt, though it did, but because for one glorious hour, your head didn't itch. Monks shave their heads, or parts of them. The tonsure, they call it. A bald circle surrounded by a fringe of hair that looks like a crown of regret. They say it brings them closer to God. You suspect it's just easier to manage. Less hair, fewer lice, though even monks scratch when they think no one's watching. The church has opinions about hair. Too long, too loose, too luxurious. It's vanity, a sin. Cover it, braid it, cut it. If you're a woman and your hair is too tempting, it's your fault when the baker stares. If you're a man and you spend more than a minute grooming it, you're flirting with pride. Either way, someone's watching. Someone always is. You've learned to accept your hair as it is, oily, tangled, and occasionally moving on its own. You try to keep it tied back, but the string always snaps. You try to keep it clean, but the world has other plans. Sometimes, late at night, you imagine what it would feel like to have it washed with warm water, lathered with something soft, rinsed until it squeaked. It's a fantasy, like dragons or dry socks. You pull your hood on, scratch behind your ear, and move on. Because in 1325, hair isn't something you style. It's something you manage, like rats or relatives, or the constant creeping sense that no matter how often you comb it, something's still crawling. Your shirt stands up on its own when you take it off, which, to be fair, doesn't happen often. You sleep in it, work in it, eat, sweat, scratch, and occasionally cry in it. It's more than clothing at this point. It's a second skin. A crusty, lumpy, suspiciously fragrant second skin that has weathered more storms and spills than you can count. You own one outfit. 2 if you're lucky. 3 if you've committed some kind of miracle and the church hasn't found out yet. It's made of wool. Thick, scratchy, and about as flexible as a plank of dry bread. The first few weeks you wore it, your skin tried to escape your body. But now you're used to it. Sort of. The itch has become part of your identity, like your name or your inability to digest cheese. The fabric holds its shape better than you do. The sleeves are stiff. The collar sags. The armpits have developed a smell that could be classified as a form of warfare. Laundry, in theory, is a thing that exists. In practice, it's more of a legend, whispered about, never seen. Washing clothes means hauling water from a well, heating it over a smoky fire, scrubbing fabric against wood with soap that doubles as punishment. Your soap is made from lie and regret. It eats through stains, dirt, and sometimes the cloth itself. The last time you tried to wash your tunic, it came out with a hole in the back and the faint aroma of boiled onion. So you stopped. Now you shake it out. Beat it against a tree. Let the wind and the occasional downpour do what they can. It's not clean. It's just less visibly awful. You tell yourself it's fine. Everyone smells. No one notices. Except they do. You've learned to stand downwind in conversation. You've learned not to raise your arms around children or small animals. Your underlayer, if you even have one, is made of linen, which sounds fancy until you wear it for 10 consecutive weeks. It stains easily, traps heat, and develops a unique stiffness after absorbing enough sweat and tears. You tell yourself it's becoming weathered, like leather or trauma. Rich people, of course, have more options. They own entire trunks of clothing, layers of silk and velvet and brocade stitched by hand and never once sullied by actual labor. But even they don't wash them often. They hang them in the sun, dust them with perfume, and call it a day. Sometimes they rub herbs into the seams to mask the rot. You once saw a nobleman walking through the square, smelling like rosemary and wet dog. He looked proud. No one said anything. There are tailors in town who can mend rips and patch holes if you can pay. You can't. So you stitch with whatever thread you can scavenge. One sleeve of your tunic is sewn with horsehair, the other with twine. You think the collar is held together with part of an old fishing net. It works. Sort of. You're just careful not to move too quickly, or the seam might open and reintroduce you to the wind. Undressing is an event. You do it rarely, and only when absolutely necessary, bathing, medical emergencies, or when your shirt starts crawling on its own. Removing your tunic feels like peeling a boiled potato that's been left too long on the fire. Your skin sighs with relief, then instantly regrets it. Because underneath the layers, there is chafing and rash, and that one patch near your hip that might be mold. You wear out the clothes sometimes, lay them on a hedge, hope the breeze does more than rearrange the stench. Once, a crow tried to steal your trousers. You let it. It wasn't worth the argument. The crow dropped them 3 feet away and looked offended. Even scavengers have standards. There's a special kind of silence that happens when you finally get something clean. A rare event. A miracle. You boil the water. You scrub with ash. You pour, wring, rinse, repeat. Your hands go raw. The fabric steams in the cold air. You hold it up, dripping and pale, and wonder if this is what victory smells like. It's not. It smells like smoke and wet wool. But still, you did it. Then you put it back on, because it's the only one you have. And within 5 minutes, the armpits are back to fermenting, and you're pretty sure you felt something crawling again. Clothes aren't about fashion or comfort or even function. They're about survival. You wear them until they fall apart. Then you wear what's left as a scarf or a bandage or a rag to beat the lice out of your mattress. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is truly clean. And still, when someone asks if you've washed it lately, you nod. Smile. Lieutenant. Because even in 1325, pretending is easier than admitting you haven't taken it off in 3 full moons. Your hands are never clean. Not in the way you wish they were. Not in the way that suggests innocence or freshness, or even basic hygiene. They are stained, cracked, calloused, and streaked with the stories of everything you've touched. Mud, bread, firewood, manure, and occasionally something unidentifiable that you hope came from an animal and not from your cousin's foot. You rinse them sometimes, when there's water, when someone's looking, but you don't wash them. Not really. Not in any meaningful way. Soap exists, in the same way that dragons exist, whispered about, rare, dangerous if misused. It's made from animal fat and ashes, boiled until it hardens into a gray lump that smells like burnt dinner and punishment. When you do get your hands on a piece, it feels like stone. It burns if you have cuts, which you always do. It burns even if you don't. And after scrubbing with it, your hands are dry, red, and feel strangely cleaner. But not in a gentle way, more in a scorched earth. Nothing survived this kind of way. So mostly people skip it. Water is easier, less painful, and when water's not around, which is often, there's the classic standby. Nothing. Just rub your hands against your tunic, or on the grass, or against a piece of wood, and pretend the friction makes you pure. There's an unspoken rule. Left hand for wiping, right hand for eating. That's the idea, at least. A moral compass etched into muscle memory. But let's be honest, life isn't always so neat. You forget, or you're in a rush, or you're carrying a goat and there's no time for ceremony. Eventually the lines blur. You just use whatever hand's available, and you live with the consequences. Meals are communal. No forks, no personal bowls. You eat with your fingers from a shared pot, while desperately hoping that your neighbor remembered which hand is which. You pretend you don't notice when he scratches his leg, and then reaches for another scoop of stew. You pretend your own hands are immaculate. They're not. They've been everywhere. They've picked vegetables, slaughtered chickens, scooped mud, and scratched at the lice comb tucked behind your ear. Children are the worst. Their hands are always sticky, always smeared with something, always reaching. They wipe their noses with their palms, their mouths with their sleeves, and then proudly hand you things. Berries, feathers, dead frogs. You take them. Of course you do. You're polite. Then you wipe your hands on your trousers and try not to think about it. Doctors, such as they are, don't wash their hands. They move from patient to patient with the same bloodied tools, the same fingers, the same casual shrug. Disease spreads quietly, efficiently, invisibly. No one knows about germs. Not really. They talk about bad air, unbalanced humors, celestial punishments. But no one looks at a set of filthy fingernails and sees danger. They see work, labor, normalcy. Monks sometimes wash their hands before meals, as a ritual, not for cleanliness, but for humility. Holy water in a brass basin, a few splashes, a muttered prayer, then back to the bread. You once saw a friar pick up a fish with hands still wet from the last plague victim he'd tended. He blessed the food. Everyone ate. No one questioned it. You've tried to make your own soap once. Boiled pig fat, stirred in ashes. Let it set. The smell was unbearable. The result was worse. It crumbled when dry and foamed like boiling stew when wet. It worked in a sense. Your hands were stripped of dirt, also of skin. You didn't try again. Some say nobles have sweet-smelling soaps, imported from the south, made with oils and herbs and luxury. But you've never seen one, and you've seen a lot of nobles up close. Their hands are just as cracked, their nails just as black. Perfume can't hide everything. They still scratch like the rest of us. At night, you rub your hands together and feel every ridge, every scar. You remember what you touched today: the grain, the sweat, the fire, the child's head you patted, the cow you milked, the bucket you emptied behind the house, the bread you tore for supper. There's no barrier, no gloves, just you and the world skin to skin. You curl your fingers into fists and sleep like that, to keep the warmth in, to keep the filth close. In the morning you'll rise, you'll spit on your palms, rub them together. Maybe rinse in the trough if it's not frozen. Maybe not. And then you'll reach for breakfast with the same hands that touched everything. Because in 1325, clean hands are not a standard. They're a myth. A legend told by people who've clearly never lived a day in your skin. You smell like smoke, onions, and damp wool that's been worn through a thunderstorm and a moral crisis. Which is to say, you smell like everyone else. The scent of the medieval world isn't something you notice right away. It creeps up on you slowly, like rot under floorboards, or guilt in a confession booth. You go nose blind to yourself. You have to. Because if you didn't, you'd never stop crying. Still, every now and then, someone wrinkles their nose in your direction. That's when the panic sets in. You check your armpits, which haven't known soap since the last harvest festival. You sniff your tunic, which hasn't seen daylight off your body in 3 months. And then, as always, you remember, deodorant doesn't exist. Not for you, not for anyone. What exists is shame, and layers, and herbs, if you're lucky. The wealthy smell different. Not better, just different. They dab themselves with rose water, jasmine oil, ground cinnamon, cloves. Things that sound luxurious until you realize they're not using them to smell good. They're using them to cover up the fact that they, too, smell like people who haven't bathed since Epiphany. They wear scent like armor, a fragile floral defense against the human condition. You once passed a nobleman in the market whose cloak smelled like rosemary and something that might have once been mint. He moved like he expected you to bow. You didn't. You were too busy wondering if the perfume was hiding something worse, because it usually is. The sweet notes are the first to arrive, but they're always followed by the base: sweat, skin, breath, and the faint suggestion of mildew. You've tried herbs, crushed lavender in your sleeves, sage stuffed into your boots, a sprig of thyme braided into your hair, which gave you a headache and attracted a goat. You once rubbed basil on your armpits before a feast. It helped for 20 minutes, then melted into something sour and betrayed. You spent the rest of the evening sitting very still, praying no one hugged you. Most of the time, you rely on fire. Stand close to the hearth. Let the smoke do what it can. Smoke dries you out, masks the stink. And if someone asks why you're hovering so near the flames, you just say you're cold, which you are. But mostly, you're hoping the smoke will sear away the part of you that smells like disappointment and cabbage. Some people hang sachets of herbs around their necks, tiny pouches filled with rose petals, cloves, dried citrus peel. You've seen them tucked into bodices, sewn into cloaks, dangled from belts. Not fashion, survival. One woman had a necklace of garlic and marigold, like a saint trying to ward off both illness and conversation. You've even seen someone carry a pomander, a round metal ball filled with perfumed wax or resin, swung gently beneath the nose like an apology to the air. Usually nobles, sometimes priests, always people trying to pretend the world doesn't reek. But for most of us, there is no perfume, no pomander, no rose water. Just hope. Hope that the person next to you smells slightly worse, that the wind is blowing the right way, that no one says anything when you lift your arms. You learn tricks. Keep your distance. Stand near the tannery so you smell less noticeable. Rub yourself with grass. Drink enough wine that your breath becomes its own distraction. Speak softly, so people lean in voluntarily and can't blame you for what happens next. Children don't notice. They smell like dirt and curiosity. Dogs don't care. They love you regardless. But your neighbors, they notice. They judge. Quietly. Passive-aggressively. Someone might mention how fresh the baker's wife always seems, how sweet her hair smells. Then they glance at you, and you know. There's shame in it, a kind you don't talk about, a kind that clings to you like a second odor. You tell yourself it's the times, that no one expects you to smell like roses, that your worth isn't measured in sweat, but still, there are days you can't stand the scent of yourself, days when even the goats wrinkle their noses as you walk by. And yet, you keep going. You layer the same tunic, stuff another handful of crushed mint into your belt, stand in the sun and pretend it's a cleanse. Because in 1325, smelling awful isn't a failure. It's a given. The art lies in smelling just slightly less awful than yesterday. A sprig of sage, a splash of wine, a whispered prayer to the gods of scent. And then you smile. Not because you smell good, but because no one has said anything today. Yet. You're in a castle, which should be impressive, except the first thing you notice isn't the stonework or the banners or the echo of your footsteps in the great hall. It's the smell. Faint at first, then strong, then inescapable, a rich blend of damp stone, boiled meat, and something sharper, earthy, sour, and alarmingly human. That scent, that's the garderobe, otherwise known as the medieval toilet, otherwise known as the one architectural flaw that makes you question the entire concept of nobility. They call it a room, but it's barely a niche. A narrow slit in the stone wall with a wooden bench balanced over it. Hole in the center, breeze through the bottom. No doors, no lock. Sometimes a curtain if you're lucky. It empties straight into the moat, which sounds efficient until you remember that the moat is not just water. It's a stew. A slow-moving graveyard of waste, rainwater, animal runoff, and the occasional unfortunate servant who got too close after dinner. You approach it cautiously, as if it might lunge at you. The walls are streaked with mildew. The wood is warped and splintered. There's no seat, no chambermaid, no hope. Just the hole. And below it, darkness. You don't want to look down. You do anyway. A mistake. The smell rises like a ghost. You gag. Not dramatically. Just a small defeated noise, the kind your soul makes when it remembers there are no better options. You sit. Carefully. The stone is cold. The bench creaks ominously. You try not to shift your weight too much. Try not to think about what lies directly beneath you. Try not to remember the story of the knight who fell through. They say he lived. You suspect they lie. The garderobe is where dignity goes to die. It's also where secrets go to escape. Conversations echo in these stone tubes. A whisper here can slide along the shaft and end up in the ears of a cook 3 floors down. You once overheard an affair being confessed mid-defecation. You didn't mean to. But the acoustics were spectacular. And then there's the matter of enemies. Because yes, there are documented cases, actual horrifying cases, of attackers climbing up through the waste chute to infiltrate castles. Men, grown men, volunteers presumably, covered in filth, crawling through human sludge, emerging into the castle bowels like sewage-slick goblins of vengeance. You wonder what kind of dedication that takes, what level of hatred, or hunger, or hope. You hope you never find out. Once, someone tried to block the chute with thorns. Didn't work. The next person who used the guardrobe ended up with scratches in places you don't talk about. Another time, they tried setting it on fire. Also didn't work. Just made everything worse. The smell lingered for weeks. A smoky bouquet of regret and roasted sin. The nobles pretend it's all normal. They use perfumed cloths to cover their noses. They light incense in the hallway. One baroness dropped rose petals into the shaft, as if that would somehow transform it. It didn't. Now it just smells like flowers and fear. In theory, the moat carries everything away. In reality, it doesn't move fast enough. On hot days, it simmers. On cold days, it freezes, with surprises trapped beneath the surface like cursed fossils. Children dare each other to throw rocks into it. Once, someone fell in. They came out changed, quiet, hollow-eyed. They don't speak of it anymore. The castle has chamber pots, too, for nighttime, for emergencies, for guests who don't understand how drafts and bare bottoms interact. But those have their own risks. You've emptied one. You've seen what happens when someone forgets to rinse, or aim, or care. And then there's the danger of where to dump it. Windows are the usual choice. Down into the courtyard, onto the path, sometimes onto people. The phrase "garde l'eau" is shouted first. Watch the water. But people rarely do. You've seen men cursed out, slapped, and once even kissed in gratitude after dodging a mid-air splash of human waste. The streets are dangerous. The guardrobe, ironically, is safer, if only marginally. Still, there's a kind of silence that falls when you're in there, alone, perched over the abyss. The wind howls up like an ancient warning. You stare at the opposite wall, at the moss crawling slowly along the cracks, and you think, this is power? This is nobility? The king himself sits on a hole just like this, cloaked in velvet, surrounded by stone, and just as vulnerable to the wind. His waist slides down the same chute. His secrets echo through the same shaft. You suddenly feel a little better. Or worse. It's hard to say. Because in 1325, everyone ends up here eventually. The peasant, the priest, the prince. All of them squatting over the same dark moat, whispering prayers to the god of structural integrity. It's the great equalizer. The only difference is who pretends it smells like roses. Children are everywhere. They tumble through the mud like puppies, shriek like demons, and smell like a mixture of milk, ashes, and divine punishment. You hear them before you see them, laughing, wailing, throwing things, themselves included. They are dirty in ways that feel philosophical, like they were born not just into sin, but into grime itself. And no one seems particularly eager to scrub it off. The average child in 1325 has never been clean. Not once. Not really. They are swaddled in cloths that are meant to absorb, not prevent. If they're infants, those cloths stay on until they fall off or rot, whichever comes first. There are no wipes, no powders, no soft floral-smelling lotions, just rags and a bucket. And someone whispering a desperate prayer that this time the mess misses the bed. Toddlers walk barefoot through courtyards dotted with manure, drag food across their faces like artists working in butter and despair, and suck on whatever fits into their mouths. Sticks, fabric, beetles. You've seen a child gnawing on the corner of a wooden bench with such dedication it felt holy. You didn't stop him. No one does. He looked happy. That's rare. Bathing is infrequent, even for adults. For children, it's practically mythical. There is a vague understanding that water exists and that it might remove surface-level dirt. But the energy required to wrestle a child into a wash tub, followed by the energy required to keep them in it, far outweighs the benefit. Most parents, understandably, give up. They wipe what's necessary. They scrape what's visible. And the rest is left to time, wind, and divine filtration. Children smell like livestock, like hearth smoke and unfinished meals, like moldy apples and boiled turnips. You stop noticing after a while, or maybe your nose gives up. The human body can only take so much before it adapts in self-defense. You assume the saints can smell it too, but they seem to be tolerating it, probably out of pity. Discipline is inconsistent. A child who smears mud across your tunic might get a cuff to the head, or a laugh, or a warning that sounds suspiciously like a joke. Parents are tired. They've already buried one or two, maybe more. No one counts anymore, not out loud. Infant mortality is high. You know this. Everyone does. Children die from fever, from hunger, from nothing at all. One moment they're laughing. The next they're cold. Small coffins are built faster than cradles. Hope is rationed. Love is cautious. Parents learn not to look too long, not to dream too big, not to waste time with things like brushing hair or wiping noses unless the Pope himself is visiting. There are no diapers, not in the way you're thinking. Cloths are used, yes, but mostly as a suggestion. Toddlers are naked below the waist more often than not. When they squat in the yard and make eye contact while relieving themselves, you learn to look away. Dignity is not a childhood feature. Toilet training is less about training and more about eventual awareness. A moment comes when the child no longer soils the floor. It's treated like a miracle. A feast might be held. Bread might be shared. Someone might even bathe the child in celebration, briefly and under protest. They chew with their mouths open. They cough into the air. They sneeze onto whatever or whoever is closest. Their hands are vectors of mystery. They collect things, stones, bones, feathers, teeth. You don't ask where they find them. You don't want to know. Once a child handed you something sticky. You took it. You regretted it for hours. And yet somehow they survive. Some of them. The tough ones. The lucky ones. The ones who learn to drink water without swallowing the slime. Who eat bread without choking. Who fall in mud but not in plague. You watch them grow, slowly. Like weeds in a field that no one thought would sprout again. They are strong in ways you can't name. Resilient beyond reason. A boy with snot running down his chin can still outrun a chicken, outshout his siblings, and outwit a grown man twice his size. A girl with tangled hair and fleas can sing like a lark and make your heart twist in your chest with something that feels dangerously like hope. Hygiene is not a priority. Never has been. Not when there are mouths to feed, winters to survive, and death waiting just beyond the hedge. Cleanliness is luxury. Childhood is chaos. And survival, more than anything, is a miracle. You watch them play. Dirty knees, muddy cheeks, faces alight with mischief and defiance. And for one strange moment you think, maybe dirt is holy. Maybe in this world, joy is what happens when no one is looking, and everyone smells the same. The monastery smells faintly better than everywhere else. Not good, just better. Less of the usual blend of dung, sweat, and doom. More herbs, more beeswax, a suggestion of stone and silence. You feel it as soon as you pass through the gates. The air shifts. People lower their voices. The chickens even seem quieter, though that might be fear or divine pressure. Inside, everything is measured, timed, chanted. Life is a loop. Pray, work, pray, eat, pray again. And yes, sometimes bathe, not often, and not for comfort. Baths here are symbolic, a cleansing of sin, not skin, which means you emerge just as dirty, but slightly more holy. Maybe, if God was listening. Monks bathe more than peasants, technically. Maybe once a month, maybe twice if they're feeling particularly defiled, but only under the strictest of rules. No warm water, no scented oils, no scrubbing that borders on vanity. Soap is discouraged. Not because it doesn't work, but because it works too well. Too much cleanliness? That's suspicious. Suggests pride. Suggests temptation. Suggests you're preparing to be seen. And who exactly are you hoping sees you in a monastery? The bathhouse is a stone room with a trickle of cold water and a basin large enough to drown in, which might be intentional. You undress behind a thin curtain, aware that the saints are carved into the walls, judging. Always judging. You step into the water and immediately regret every sin you've ever committed, not because of guilt, because the water is freezing. You don't soak. That's indulgent. You don't relax. That's lazy. You pour water over your head and mutter a psalm through chattering teeth. You scrape at the dirt with your fingernails. You hope it's enough. You hope no one notices the patch of moss growing between your toes. Nuns have their own routines, private, sacred, terrifying. You've heard whispers of rosewater, but you suspect it's a lie. More likely, vinegar and silence. You saw a nun once after bathing. Her face was red from the cold. Her hair slicked back like a seal. She didn't speak, just nodded at you as if daring you to comment. You didn't. Monasteries sometimes have aqueducts, or at least channels carved into stone. Running water, the kind that makes peasants weep. But it's not used for luxury. It's for washing linen, for preparing food, for rituals. The monks don't splash in it. They direct it, like clerical engineers, always conscious of waste. Every drop has purpose. Every basin has rules. There are saints who were famous for filth. One of them, you're told, never bathed in his life. He wore the same tunic until it rotted off his body. And they made him a holy man, because dirt, apparently, proves devotion. Suffering is sacred. Soap, suspect. Still, there are exceptions. High feast days, ordinations, visits from bishops. On those days, the brothers bathe in groups, in silence, robes removed, modesty clutched like relics. No one speaks. No one laughs. You'd think nudity would encourage familiarity. It doesn't. It just highlights how temporary flesh is, how sagging, how real. Everyone stares straight ahead, at the wall, at the cross, at anything but each other. Afterward, you dry off with a rough cloth that exfoliates more than it comforts. Your skin burns, not from heat, from abrasion, from having been reminded that it exists. You put your robe back on, still damp. It clings in all the wrong places. You feel cleaner, but not better. Some monks avoid bathing altogether, choosing instead to whip themselves at dawn. Penance over hygiene. They bleed before they scrub. You admire the commitment. You do not join in. Sometimes bathing is punishment, assigned to the wayward, to the proud. Go wash, they say, and think about your sins, as if the water will strip away more than just the top layer of grime. as if it'll get into the soul and shake loose whatever pride made you speak during evening silence. You once heard of a monk who bathed every week. He was exiled, not for heresy, for suspicion. No one trusts a man who smells too fresh. What's he hiding? What's he trying to wash away? So you follow the rules. You bathe when told. You mumble the prayers. You keep your hands where everyone can see them. You emerge colder, wetter, but unchanged. Except maybe you're slightly closer to God, or at least to a version of yourself that can endure a little more discomfort in His name. Cleanliness is next to godliness, yes, but not too close. Leave room for doubt, for humility, for filth that reminds you what you're made of: dust, ashes, sweat, and grace, if you're lucky. If you're very, very lucky. Summer doesn't arrive gently. It smacks the village like a damp rag to the face, clinging to every surface, every crevice, every soul. The air thickens. The sun lingers longer than welcome. And everything starts to rot. Food, tempers, the illusion of personal hygiene. If winter is a slow surrender to frostbite and chattering teeth, summer is a slow bake in your own biological marinade. You wake up sweating. You went to bed sweating. You will sweat all day and all night and for weeks on end until autumn comes to collect the dead and cool the rest. Your tunic, already stiff from wear, now clings to you like a second skin, damp, itchy, and tragically loyal. You peel it off only when absolutely necessary, which is never, because there's nowhere to put it, nowhere to wash it, nowhere it won't mold. The stench changes with the seasons. In winter it's smoke and wet fur and the sour musk of too many people indoors with too few fires. But in summer it blooms, like a corpse flower, like an offering to the gods of decay. Sweat turns acidic. Feet turn to cheese. Armpits to crime scenes. The whole village becomes a carnival of unwashed bodies trying their best and failing spectacularly. You are not exempt. You smell yourself first. A hint of something sharp under the collar. Then the growing awareness that your thighs have been arguing all day and you're losing. You shift constantly. Not for comfort, which no longer exists, but to air out patches of skin before they fuse. There is no deodorant. There is only distance, strategic leaning, standing downwind, or pretending you've lost your sense of smell, which at this point might be a mercy. You envy the dogs who nose through filth like it's perfume. You envy the pigs. They get to roll in mud on purpose. Bathing doesn't help. It's rare, it's cold, and within 5 minutes of stepping out of the basin, assuming you had access to one, you're sweating again. Fresh sweat over clean skin feels worse, somehow. A betrayal. You were briefly hopeful. Now you're just damp and disappointed. People try. They rub themselves with herbs, dust their feet with ashes, stuff flowers into their sleeves and hair. You saw a man once with lavender sprigs tucked under each arm like holy talismans. They wilted within the hour. You didn't have the heart to tell him. His hope smelled better than he did. And then there's the laundry problem. Clothes that were borderline manageable in spring become biohazards by midsummer. But washing is still an ordeal. Hauling water, heating it, scrubbing until your knuckles split. And for what? A tunic that'll be soaked through before breakfast? A shift that'll collect every insect between your back and the outer layer? Number. You wear what you have. You pat it dry in the sun. You pray the wind helps. It doesn't. Animals suffer too. The chickens pant. The goats go still. The pigs wallow deeper and glare at you like you're the intruder. You are. They've figured it out. They've learned how to cool off. You just stand in the sun like a boiling potato and pretend it's character building. Food spoils faster. Bread sweats. Cheese drips. Meat turns on you in hours. The flies arrive like summoned spirits, and they never come alone. They land on everything. Your food, your face, your filth, and leave behind tiny curses. You swat, you wave, you slap your own arms until they sting, and still the flies return. Children become feral, covered in a mix of dirt, fruit juice, and blood from unidentifiable injuries. They run half naked through the fields, shrieking with freedom and fungus. Parents give up. There's only so much scrubbing a soul can do when the world itself is melting. The wealthy complain with silk fans and buckets of rose water. You complain with your eyebrows because it's too hot to move your mouth. The local lord hosts feasts in the shaded hall, and everyone pretends not to smell each other. The peasants gather near the river and pray the breeze doesn't bring the scent of the tanner's vats, or worse, the stagnant moat behind the castle. You survive by going still. Shade becomes sacred. Water, miraculous. A breeze is an answered prayer. You learn to breathe through your mouth, then stop, because your tongue tastes the air, and the air tastes like boiled humanity. There is no relief, only endurance. You don't sleep so much as faint and resurface. You don't feel clean so much as less crusty. And when it rains, you run into it, arms wide, not for the joy, but for the rinse. Because in summer, you are not a person. You are a stew, a mobile ecosystem, a lesson in humility and fungi. And if you're lucky, very lucky, you only faint once before the sun sets. You hear them before you see them. Tiny claws on wood, paper-thin squeaks, the soft whisper of something alive moving where it shouldn't be. Above you, beside you, beneath you. In medieval life, vermin are not intruders. They are residents, tenants who never paid rent and cannot be evicted. They are everywhere, and you stopped screaming about it years ago. The thatch above your head writhes at night. Birds nest in it, yes, but so do mice, and rats, and the kinds of bugs that don't have names because no one's brave enough to get close enough to study them. Sometimes things fall out of the ceiling, bits of straw, bits of other things. You brush them from your bed or your face and keep sleeping. There's no alternative. Your food is a community event, not because it's shared with family, though it often is, but because everything from ants to weevils to bold, fat rats considers it communal property. You open your grain sack, and there they are, black specks, moving like spilled ink. You don't throw it out. You sift. You blow. You convince yourself they're extra protein, and you eat. Mice get into the cheese. They're clever. They chew through barrels, through walls, through whatever illusion you had that something, anything, might be untouched. You once found a mouse drowned in your beer. You drank around it. Everyone does. It's not ideal. It's just Tuesday. Rats are worse, bigger, meaner, smarter. You see their eyes sometimes glittering in the dark, just above the floorboards. They watch you with a kind of ancient recognition. Not fear, not hunger. Just the quiet confidence of something that knows it will outlive you. And probably eat you too, if the plague comes back and no one finds your body fast enough. Bugs are the wallpaper of medieval life. Fleas, lice, mites, worms in your bread, beetles in your flour. You eat them. You itch because of them. You scratch until you bleed. You share your scalp with a population the size of a minor kingdom. No one is immune. You've seen nuns combing lice from each other's veils with the calm efficiency of seasoned generals. You've seen barons scratch under their wigs like dogs with a guilty secret. Hair becomes a battleground. You oil it, you braid it, you cover it, you pray, but still, something crawls. You try not to look. The lice comb is passed around like holy relic. You once saw someone use the edge of a knife. You looked away. You didn't ask how it ended. You've eaten bugs. On purpose and by accident. You've chewed bread that crackled. You've bitten into fruit and felt it move. You've swallowed something you will not name, not even to yourself. And you kept chewing because it was food or close enough. Hunger has no pride. You once tried to keep a loaf of bread safe from mice by hanging it from the rafters in a cloth bag. In the morning, it was gone. The bag too. Nothing left but a single suspicious turd and the lingering scent of rodent victory. You now sleep with your food under your blanket. The rats sleep closer. Children don't care. They name the mice, chase beetles like toys, try to pet the rats. Sometimes they succeed, sometimes they get bit, and then you worry. Not about the bite, but about the fever that might follow. Rats carry more than crumbs. They carry curses, plague, death, history. There's a cat, of course. Every home has one, or two, or a half-wild swarm that comes and goes like minor gods. They keep the population down, but they're lazy too, well-fed on scraps, selective in their murders, and smart enough to know that humans are messier than mice. You once saw your cat sit and watch a rat eat your dinner. No malice, just respect. You sometimes wonder what it would be like to eat a meal alone, truly alone. No wings buzzing near your ear, no legs skittering across your foot, no movement in the corner of your vision. But then again, would you even trust it? A silent room, an untouched bowl. What would it mean? What would it cost? So you coexist with the rats, the bugs, the mice, and the mites, and the fleas that leap from the bed to greet you in the morning. You swat, you scratch, you curse, and then you carry on. Because there's no clean line between you and them. Just layers, degrees, negotiations. And somewhere, deep inside, you begin to accept the truth. You are not a kingdom besieged. You are a host, a moving, breathing banquet. And the guests are never late. It starts with a cough. Small, harmless, almost gentle, like your lungs are politely clearing their throat. Then comes the fever, or the rash, or the bleeding from places that should never bleed. You don't know what it is. No one does. There are no names, only symptoms, only stories, and always, eventually, a body. Disease doesn't knock in 1325. It drifts, on the wind, in the water, in the bread you left uncovered or the rat that brushed your ankle last night. It rides in on the merchant's cart, wrapped in silk and plague. It waits in the communal ladle, on the priest's fingertips, in the kiss of your child. It is patient, it is everywhere, and it is invisible, because no one knows what they're looking for. You don't understand germs. No one does. The concept hasn't been invented yet. You believe in bad air, in imbalance, in punishment. If someone dies, it's because God was angry, or the stars misaligned, or someone didn't pray hard enough. You don't wash your hands because you think they're dirty. You wash them, if you do at all, because someone told you it pleases the Lord. When sickness comes, it doesn't announce itself. It just settles in, a guest with muddy boots and sharp teeth. It curls up in your bones and waits. By the time you feel it, it's already moved in, made copies of itself, invited friends. You become a vessel, a walking, sweating, coughing sacrifice. You know someone's ill before they do. Their color shifts, their eyes dim, their steps change, and then the smell, always the smell. Something sickly sweet, like overripe fruit, like meat left too long in the sun. You learn to recognize it. You learn to fear it. Cures are guesses. Remedies passed down through desperate hands. Onion poultices, hot vinegar, leeches, bleeding, prayers scrawled on scraps of parchment and tied around your neck. You drink boiled herbs that make you vomit and hope that means it's working. You wear toads in pouches. You burn rosemary. You burn everything. Maybe the smoke will carry the sickness away. Sometimes it works, or seems to. Sometimes you survive and no one knows why. You're called blessed, or lucky, or touched by grace. But deep down, you know it's just a roll of the dice. And next time the dice won't be so kind. The bodies pile up quickly. Graves dug too shallow. Lime thrown too late. The smell lingers in your nostrils for days. You learn to dig with your mouth closed, to wrap cloth around your face not to stay clean, but to keep from retching. Children go first, then the old, then the strong, which is always a surprise. The village blacksmith, dead in 3 days. The midwife, gone before anyone knew she was ill. A farmer collapses mid-step in the field, face down in the soil he once called home. You stop asking questions. You stop visiting. You stop touching. You start whispering. Then you stop whispering, because even words feel dangerous. And then comes the shame. Because if you live, people look at you sideways. Why you? Why not the others? What did you do? Or worse, what didn't you do? You start to wonder the same. Was it the herbs? The prayer? The fact that you haven't bathed in 2 weeks and the disease prefers cleaner flesh? Plague changes everything. Not just the bodies, but the breath between them. You hesitate before hugging. You pause before sharing bread. You look at your own hands and wonder what they carry. Not sin, not guilt. Just something smaller, more powerful. Something you can't see, but that sees you. No one talks about hygiene, not as protection, not as science. Soap is for vanity. Clean water is for rituals. Sickness, they say, is moral, a reflection of your soul. But you've seen the truth. You've seen saints die and liars live. You've watched the kind waste away and the cruel emerge untouched. There's no pattern, no justice, just dirt and breath and time. So you do what you can. You boil your rags, you light your fires, you sprinkle vinegar on your doorstep and salt on your window ledge. Not because it works, but because doing something feels better than doing nothing. Because pretending you have control is sometimes the only cure for fear. And when it passes, if it passes, you don't celebrate. You don't rejoice. You just sit quietly. You scrub the bloodstains off the floor. You burn the clothes you once shared. You bury the names you once whispered, and you wait. Because in 1325, disease never really leaves. It just steps outside for a moment, to stretch, to smile, to watch. Being rich in 1325 doesn't mean being clean. It means being theatrical. You don't wash to remove dirt. You wash to perform the illusion of purity. Nobles bathe, yes, in copper tubs hauled into drafty rooms, filled with lukewarm water poured from pitchers carried by servants who are too tired to care how regal you look while pretending not to shiver. The water is sometimes scented with rose petals or herbs or wine if you're particularly indulgent and deeply confused about what constitutes hygiene. The petals float like promises. They don't do anything, but they look beautiful while slowly browning into sludge. The nobles sink into the water like it's a throne, not noticing or choosing not to notice that it's already cloudy after a few swirls. They do not scrub. Scrubbing is for peasants. They dab. They pat. They let attendants pour warm water over their shoulders while someone hums a Gregorian chant in the corner, probably to drown out the smell, which is rich, layered. A bouquet of sweat, musk, and perfume that's trying its best but losing the battle. Because medieval perfume isn't fresh. It's not citrus or sea breeze or meadow after rain. It's heavy, animalic, a stew of crushed flowers, oils, and sometimes actual animal glands. Musk from deer, civet from cats, ambergris from whales, which means that underneath the scent of rose or lavender, there's always something more primal, something sour, something warm and alive and slightly wrong. A noblewoman might wear a sachet of dried herbs around her neck. A nobleman might dab cologne behind his ears. They carry pomanders, metal balls filled with spices, to press against their noses when the stench of the common folk becomes overwhelming. But they never consider that they, too, are part of the olfactory assault, just in a higher tax bracket. They bathe occasionally, maybe once a month, twice if they've been sweating publicly at a tournament, but no one expects regularity. Regularity implies need, and nobles don't need. They float above necessity, cocooned in lace and denial. Their attendants change their linens more often than they change their water. The bathing room itself is a spectacle. Tapestries to block the draft, candles to hide the mold, a fire crackling in the hearth that warms the ankles but never quite reaches the torso. Servants bustle in and out with steaming pails, straining not to spill. One pours, one brushes, one fetches a comb, another offers a wine goblet because nothing pairs with mild nudity and tepid water like lukewarm alcohol. There are mirrors, not glass, polished metal, just enough to see your own vague outline and decide you're beautiful. Nobles gaze at their reflections as if checking for divine approval. They see the rosiness in their cheeks and assume it's vitality, not the rash creeping in from yesterday's feast. They never bathe alone. Privacy is for the poor. Bathing is social, political, sensual sometimes. Conversations echo through the steam. Flirtations drift like vapor. Servants pretend not to hear, unless they're supposed to. Sometimes they're supposed to. You once saw a baron soak for an hour while poets read aloud from a scroll about cleanliness being next to holiness. Then he stepped out of the tub, was wrapped in a linen robe, and immediately farted with the confidence of a man who hadn't wiped in 3 days. No one blinked. They don't wash their hair often. Too much effort. Too much drying time. Wigs are easier. Or just powder. White powder, thick as snow, dabbed along the scalp to absorb grease and add prestige. The result? A sort of greasy cloud hovering just above the ear line. From a distance, it looks intentional. Up close, it smells like sadness. They'll tell you it's about balance. Too much bathing is dangerous. It opens the pores, lets sickness in. A bath might be followed by a fever, and that proves their point. Better to stay slightly soiled. Better to perfume the filth than tempt the spirits. When they leave the tub, they are ceremoniously dried by linen cloths that cost more than your cottage. They are dressed by others. Every layer added slowly, reverently, as if covering not just skin, but the memory of what that skin went through. And still, they stink, just differently, like dried roses left too long in a vase, like goat cheese hidden under silk, like candle wax and ambition. You can smell the money, and the mold, and the faintest echo of lavender fighting for its life. Because in 1325, bathing like a noble means bathing in theater. You're not clean. You're curated. You're fragranced. You're adorned. But underneath it all, the dirt still lingers. The sweat still gathers. The stink still waits. It just wears a nicer robe. The church does not trust soap, not fully, not the way it trusts suffering, or silence, or dirt. Dirt, at least, is honest. It tells the truth about your body, your labor, your sins. But a clean face, a fragrant neck, that's something else. That's pride, wearing perfume and pretending it's purity. You are told from the pulpit that the soul is what matters. The flesh is temporary, tempting, dangerous. Too much care for the body, and you risk feeding the wrong part of yourself. The soft part, the part that looks in the mirror and likes what it sees. That part leads to lust, then shame, then hell. Soap is a whisper of rebellion, not just because it washes, but because it suggests that the body matters, that it deserves gentleness, that it deserves anything at all. And that is dangerous thinking. Priests preach humility, and nothing humbles like filth. When your skin is crusted, your hair tangled, your nails lined with the black half-moons of honest work, then you are close to God. Then you are safe. Safe from vanity. Safe from lust. Safe from thinking you deserve anything better than the cold floor and the rough wool tunic you've been wearing since Candlemas. Cleanliness is viewed as performance, suspicious. A man who bathes too often, is he trying to seduce someone? A woman who smells of roses, what exactly is she hiding beneath that scent? Clean people are watched, not envied, monitored. Holiness, after all, is not found in the bathhouse. It's found in the confessional, in the ash, in the denial of flesh. There are saints who never washed. They are held up as examples. Their filth was their offering, their lice, their humility, their sores, their proof of faith. One saint wore an iron chain under his robe for 30 years. Another refused to bathe even when his skin sloughed off in patches. These are the stories you're told as a child. These are the people you're meant to emulate. You try, you really do. But sometimes your skin itches, your hair clumps, you want to rinse, to scrub. Just a little. Just enough to feel human again. But you resist. Because the church says God sees that impulse, weighs it, wonders what it means. The monks tell you that demons love soap, that cleanliness opens the door to vanity, that the devil himself smells like lavender. It sounds absurd, but you believe it anyway. Everyone does. You saw a girl once, scrubbed pink for Easter Mass, hair braided with ribbon. The priest refused to bless her, said she looked too proud, said humility wears dust, not lace. She cried through the whole sermon. There are places where washing is part of ritual, baptism, of course, but even that's a beginning, not a habit. It's not about removing dirt. It's about declaring sin, symbolic, singular. Don't confuse the water of salvation with the water in your basin. One heals, the other tempts. Public bathhouses get the worst of it. Once tolerated, now whispered about. Too much flesh, too much laughter, too much steam, and not enough repentance. Some towns shut them down. Others leave them open but darkened, as if to say, fine, bathe, but do it quietly, and never look too happy about it. Priests walk the streets with incense, blessing thresholds, scolding shopkeepers who keep scented herbs too close to the door. Temptation lingers in rosemary and mint. You learn to tuck your lavender pouch deeper into your cloak. Not because you're ashamed, but because you're tired of the judgment. In confession, you admit you rinsed your feet in the stream, that you plucked the lice from your sister's scalp and used hot vinegar. The priest sighs, asks why, asks what it made you feel. You say it made you feel clean. He frowns, writes your penance on a splintered board. Dirtier people have done more. Cleanliness, the church says, should come from within, from fasting, from prayer, from kneeling in the mud until the bones ache and the thoughts go quiet. And you try to believe that. You try to see your own filth as holy. But sometimes, late at night when the house is asleep and the fire is low, you dip a rag in warm water and wipe your neck. Just once. Just a small circle of skin behind the ear. And you sigh. Because you know the church is watching. But for a moment, you feel human. You feel forgiven. Not by God, but by yourself. And then the guilt returns. Because in 1325, being clean might save your body, but it could damn your soul. You crawl back to your pallet, though pallet is generous. It's a pile of straw, flattened by use and damp at one corner for reasons you no longer investigate. It creaks as you lower yourself onto it, not because of the frame, there is no frame, but because your knees are tired, your back is tired, and even your thoughts feel blistered. You stink. That's not an insult. That's just a fact. Your body has become a museum of smells, sweat that dried and came back to life, dust from the fields, smoke from the fire that wouldn't catch, a faint trace of the salted fish you dropped on your lap at supper, and something else, something musty and rodent adjacent that clings to your sleeves no matter how long you shake them out. Your shirt is still damp from the morning. Your feet ache from the uneven stones. Your scalp itches. You scratch without thinking, then wince when your fingernail comes back with a speck of something you pretend not to notice. The lice have claimed this part of you. You've stopped negotiating. It's not a war. It's a lease agreement. Your house is quiet now. If you're lucky, only one or two people are snoring. If you're less lucky, someone is still coughing. If you're truly cursed, that someone is you. The straw shifts beside you. Someone turns over. Someone else sighs. You catch the faint sound of a rat chewing in the corner. You make a mental note to check what's missing in the morning. Then you forget. It doesn't matter. The rat always wins. You shift under the rough blanket. It scratches. It always scratches. It smells like everyone who's ever used it, and none of them were particularly gentle. But it's warm, or at least warmer than the air. You curl into it like an apology, hoping it forgives you for what you've done to it today. The moonlight slips through the gap in the boards. You can see dust floating in the air, even in the dark. You think about the sermon you heard last week, the one about humility and suffering, and how each scratch on your skin brings you closer to God. You wonder if God has ever had fleas. Your hands are dirty. You meant to wash them. Then again, you meant to do a lot of things. Scrub your feet, comb your hair, change your shirt, remember what day it is. All noble goals, all equally ignored. The truth is, you're too tired. And in this century, tired wins. Tired always wins. Your stomach grumbles. Dinner wasn't enough. It never is. But you're grateful for it anyway. Grateful for the crust of bread, even though it had something moving in it. Grateful for the turnip stew, even though someone dropped a spoon in and no one fished it out. Hunger makes philosophers of everyone. Gratitude where once there would have been complaint. You stare at the ceiling. The thatch rustles. You pretend it's the wind. You tell yourself nothing alive is dropping onto your face tonight. You believe it just enough to keep your eyes open, just enough to keep them closed. You think about bathing. You always do, just before sleep. The idea of it, the memory of warmth, of clean skin, if only once or twice in your life. You wonder what it would feel like to soak in a tub without being watched, to smell like something other than toil. You wonder what kind of person you'd be if you didn't stink. But it's a fantasy, not one you chase, just one you visit. The way some people dream of angels or strawberries. You roll onto your side. The straw shifts. A bug scurries across your foot and vanishes. You let it. You're too tired to care, too tired to scream, too tired to start over. You made it through another day. You didn't die of fever, or accident, or someone else's poor aim with a chamber pot. You weren't accused of heresy, or theft, or pride. You were not bitten by anything rabid, not yet. That's something. In 1325, survival is the highest form of cleanliness. You wake up filthy, you go to sleep filthier, but you're alive. That's the miracle. That's the prize. You may be covered in grime and crawling things, but you have breath in your lungs. That's enough. That's more than most. So you close your eyes, you scratch one last time, you pull the blanket to your chin, you pray, not because it helps, but because it's habit. You mutter thanks, not for the lice, or the rats, or the blisters, but for the day, for the bed, for the fact that you're still here. And as the night creeps in, thick and restless, you sleep the way only the truly exhausted can. Curled, crusted, dreaming of nothing but morning.